Elements of an effective lesson. How do we make our 35-40 minute lesson each day more effective so that our students are able to gain maximum out of it? Let me share a presentation and using that go through the points that we need to be careful about. The first point is every lecture should only make one point. That means decide clearly what is going to be your key objective of the lesson. Do not try to mix two or more objectives in one session because not all students are equipped to learn at that pace. Say, for example, you are teaching fractions to grade 4 students. Within fractions, if you are focusing on addition of fractions, then only do addition in one class. Do not do addition and subtraction together, just to make sure that the learners who may get confused in the rules is avoided. Similarly, if you are teaching about parts of plants in a science class, deal with one part or in each day. If you are talking about root, within root, if you are talking again about taproot versus fibrous root, talk only about one thing at a time. Give more examples, discuss more, ask them questions, make them write notes. So do a variety of things but only on one point in one class so that that same point is reinforced in multiple ways and students retain that information. So take that 35 to 40 minutes and do full justice to the topic, right from the simplest of facts till slightly complex material or slightly challenging questions, or giving them some time to ask questions or clarify doubts. That way the class would, everyone would feel that they are able to follow the class well without getting distracted. So, a very important point, when you decide or you plan your lesson, make sure that you have the main topic, you know the subtopic, and within the subtopic you're making one objective each day. The second rule that helps us make our classes effective: never run over time. The rule is because while we are focused on one subject as a teacher, students have to learn multiple subjects in a day. So they need time to transition from one class and one teacher's learning to another. Say I'm teaching a English class and the next class is a math class. If I overrun the time and the other teacher is still waiting outside and I take 5 minutes more, then the next teacher, when they come, they do not give students time to transition, but they quickly start because they obviously have lost 5 minutes. What happens to students is by the time they close the English book, open the math book, get ready with the things, their mind is not yet getting the time to take a break and transition from the first subject to the second subject. For us, we feel that it's just 5 more minutes and it doesn't matter, I would have finished what I decided today by doing that 5 minutes. But it doesn't work. The last 5 minutes, most of the times the students are already distracted because the bell has rung, so they are mentally off. So a lot of times that extra time that we take is not really effective. We have not been able to teach what we could in our class time. So make sure, in fact, you finish 5 minutes early so that you are able to summarize, consolidate, make sure everybody has taken notes, give them homework, give them a reminder, tell them what they can expect in the next class, give them some time to close their books and get ready for this. So all these things really help in making our students organized, and as a teacher we also become more organized when we realize we have to finish things 5 minutes early. We plan everything in that way. So remember, never have more than one subtopic to be discussed and not to run over time. Give your students something to take home. What is that? Do you think it is homework that we can give them to take home? Well, not just that. What this statement means is the students should feel excited to go home and talk about what happened in the class. So they should wait to tell their parents, their grandparents, their siblings, their friends, hey, you know what? Today, this is what happened in my math class. This is what happened in my English class. A really funny incident happened in school today. I really enjoyed the joke that my teacher quoted in connection to a science topic. Or there was a really good example that my teacher gave, and I suddenly realized, oh, I never thought about it. The history lesson was such a great story. I wanted to tell you about my experience. These are the things that students should feel when they are on their way home. They should be excited to talk about what happened in school. Which means in our classes, there has to be some excitement created. I am not asking you every day you need to crack a joke or you need to be very funny. No, every day there has to be something, igniting their interest, something that they suddenly feel, oh wow, I never knew about it. So think of some point that you want to bring to their attention, which they may have known or seen before, but they never must have paid so much attention to. Yes, I understand every class may not be, I agree, but let's try to make an attempt to do this. The idea is they should feel by going to school or by sitting in the class, I get to hear about these examples, these jokes, these incidents, these experiences. If I stay at home and I am studying alone, I would miss all this. It's not always necessary that you give examples, you crack a joke. You can also involve students. Ask them to share experiences. Sometimes, yes, we may feel students share some irrelevant information, something off the topic. Yes, but sometimes these discussions make the class interesting and students start feeling more confident about sharing, talking, asking. So though sometimes we feel that students may get digressed, I'll encourage them to talk at least for some time in each class, and that is what will make students excited about taking home something back. So it's not just about the homework that we are talking about. We are talking about their interesting stories from school that they want to share once they go home. Make sure the blackboard is spotless. If you enter a classroom and the previous teacher has left something on the board, make sure, even if you are not going to use the board on that day, you erase everything, you write the date, you put the topic or the objective, and only then start. Again, it shows a little bit of organization skill from your end, that you want them to be mindful of what you're teaching today. You want them to take a break from what was done before, transition from that subject into your subject, and start on a clean slate. By making sure that you are starting with a spotless blackboard, that is what you do. And when you do this, write the date, write the topic, you are instilling in them a discipline that they need to open the notebook, start on a fresh page, put the date, make sure they begin taking down notes or writing things, doing the problems, etc. So it is a way of role modeling the behavior that you expect the students to have. When another point is when you're leaving the class, before you leave the class, make sure, we already discussed we are going to finish 5 minutes early, make sure you erase the board. Of course, after making sure that students have copied or taken down the notes or are not yet discussing what is written on the board, but once you do that, erase the board and then walk out of the class. You can also have board monitors in your class who will be doing that, who will be assigned this work that makes sure the board stays spotless every time. That way but as a teacher, I think it's very, very important to teach them this kind of a disciplined and organized way of writing and preparing for a class. Make it easy for your students to take notes. How do we do that? Well, the way you use the board. I think all of us have been taught. You start from the left top of the board and then you start moving to the right bottom of the board. You write on the left side first and then you move towards your right so that students can see what is written. It is in an order in which they have to copy. And then if you write in an unorganized way, not neat, remember there are some students who find it difficult to read when it is not in a structured form. We have different kinds of learners in our class. And people sometimes get affected or they get distracted if the board work is not clear and neat and structured. They are unable to make sense or read from there. So it's very, very important that you maintain that kind of writing on your board and in a particular way and write, in breaks. Like you write something, you take a break, you discuss that, give them time to make notes if you want them to, and then move ahead. You can't fill the whole board first and then say, wait till I finish everything and then you will take notes. Again, not everyone will be equipped to do that, right? There will be students who can do that. There will be others who will say like, I wish was given 5 minutes each for some part of the written material. That way I would have been able to do it a better job. We see sometimes, the notebooks are dirty, incomplete, not able to write. One of the reasons could also be because we as a teacher are not making it easy for them to take notes. So whatever behavior you are expecting from your students, make sure you are also following the same. So instead of saying that this is what I expect, why not do it for them and say, this is how we do it. Writing in big font, another thing, because there are children sitting, maybe in the front bench, behind. Not everyone will be able to see clearly if you are writing in a very small handwriting or if you are writing in cursive, which is difficult to read. When you draw diagrams also, if the labels are not clear, when you're drawing a diagram, erase everything, keep the diagram at the center of the board, make sure you're labeling the way you expect them to label. If you say you should label everything by drawing a line, everything should be on the left or on the right, then you have to do the same. Similarly, when you're drawing graphs, do not draw graphs freehand and make it very messy. Even if you draw freehand, make sure that the diagram or the graph that you're drawing is clear to understand. When you draw, while you're drawing, you can keep explaining and drawing and then give them sufficient time to take this down or ask question or clarify or maybe even add examples and so on. So make sure that you are giving them sufficient time for all this. You remember our first point? Each class should focus on only one point, each lecture. But you may say that I may not need 40 minutes for that one point. Yes. So reinforce the same point multiple times. So first of all, you will give the definition. Next, you will ask them to give examples. Next, you will give some real life connections, or you will say, what you're learning in this subject, you may also learn or need in another subject. You may talk about ratios, and you may say in science also, we need a lot of information about ratios when we are doing things, because when we are doing about mixtures and solutions, then there also it is about combining different material in different ratios. If we talk of percentage, we say that yes, percentage is also used in science to find percentage error, is also used in social sciences to find the percentage increase, decrease in population, maybe in inflation and so on. So talk about the same point in multiple ways so that different students with different interests are able to connect. Again, like I said, you can take help from your own students to reinforce. When you say something, you can ask at least two students to repeat it. You can ask them to give examples. You can give them some time to make notes or write down about it. So that's how we say reinforcing it in multiple ways. You can ask them questions. You can give them a small, multiple choice test for 10 minutes. So think of different ways that you can use based on your subject. You can make them draw a flow chart. You can, in English, you can make them write the difficult words and their meanings, give them a dictation. So these are exercises of reinforcing the same point multiple times. Just to summarize what we learned, the idea is we want to make classes interesting so that all types of learners, even if they like your subject, they don't like your subject, they feel they are slightly weak in your subject, they're a little slow in your subject, different kinds of learners will still be able to make some sense out of that class. So the first thing that some of the experienced faculty have shared is they always use a little bit of storytelling. Like for example, in math, before teaching Pythagoras theorem, they can talk about, how as a small child Pythagoras first thought about this theorem. Or in science, they can talk about scientists. In history, you already have a lot of storytelling. In English, you can talk about, the author, their background, where did they come from, how did they start writing. In geography, you can talk about stories around that place. You're talking about different regions, maybe about Asia, about Europe. You're talking about North India, South India. You can bring stories about these places and talk. So different subjects can have different kinds of storytelling. Doesn't always have to be once upon a time this happened. Storytelling means a little bit of background information about that topic that you can bring. Acknowledge alternate approaches. So, often students say, ma'am or sir, this thing can be also done like this. I have tried this in my house, and appreciate that. Sometimes it may, be not be the best method. Your method might be better than theirs. It's okay, but still they thought about it, right? So appreciate their thinking. What will happen is this will encourage more and more students to get into that mode of thinking different, thinking about examples and talking in class because they want to be appreciated. They want you to be impressed with their thinking. Always you also use different methods. So in math we say that sometimes when you solve an equation, also show them graphically what it means. Similarly, in science, when you teach a theory, also visually represent it like a flow diagram, like a visual, like a graphic organizer. Draw a mind map. So think about ways that you can present information theoretically and also visually, so that everybody is able to relate. Pause and question. Sometimes you ask them a question which is a factual question, like a definition, information, dates, places, names, and people can answer. Don't yet be happy about it. Think, if everyone knows the answer, let me challenge them a little bit more. Because everybody has answered, don't start off with the next topic. If in the 40 minutes you still have time, challenge them. Give them some time and say, okay, I want y'all to think of a challenging questions in this topic and ask each other. Let's see how are you able to think about it. So make sure that you are digging deeper to know that they really have understood and they are not just happy with the factual answers that they are giving. Bring some funny facts. It is always humor is one of the best ways to relate to a class. So bring some jokes, talk about how you as a student sometimes made silly errors and how did your teachers teach, or you can talk about some examples from other teachers class where you found something really interesting. Ask them to share their experiences. So make the class a little more lively sometimes. Encourage students to ask silly questions. Often students feel when they ask me a question in the class, they say, Ma'am, I don't think if this is a good question, and I tell them it's okay if it's not a good question. You have a question in your mind, please ask. Sometimes those silly questions are the ones which make sure that, misconceptions are understood. Sometimes when they ask silly questions, I'm like, oh, this is how they misunderstood it. That means I have not yet explained well. So let me explain that once more. So it's important that you let them ask silly questions. Always share your experience. That I read this book, it was very interesting. I went to this place and I saw this and I remembered what we had learnt in our subject. Something, share your experiences. So, this is what we can do to make our classes effective, teachers. Thank you. We'll come up with the next session the next time. Thank you. And you please keep doing your